Hi there, my name's Kelly York. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Curve Group. With me today,
Sonia Multani, Head of Outsource Services.
so we're here today to talk about a quite topical situation around workforce solutions. So in 25 and now into 26, we've seen a real shift towards favouring temporary workers. And actually currently that makes up about 20% of our workforce population. And in turn, about £60 billion worth of expenditure for businesses a year. So it's huge. I think what's interesting and the thing that we need to recognise is actually there's a lot of changes in the legislation and actually skill requirements that's going to change that demographic even further into 26 and into 27. So we've got day one rights coming in, which means obviously there's more risk around hiring people permanently immediately. We've got shift in work demographics, which I think is something that's high on all of our clients' agenda at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've also got the uncertainty around the skill that you need today in the business is probably very much unlikely the same skill that you're going to need in 3 years' time. And actually then when you start introducing technology and AI on productivity points, what does that mean for your workforce and number of employees that you need moving forward? So if I was going to take a prediction, I think actually that 20-80 split is going to be more likely 40-60. And therefore actually we need to start thinking about our workforce solutions better.
Yeah. And I think we're already swaying towards that 40, 60, if I'm honest with you, because I've seen a massive increase just in the last 3 months. So it's already going in that direction, I feel.
Yeah, and if you look at the stats, permanent hiring is, decreased over the last 12 months. Contractor hiring is up at 11% already.
Yeah.
And that is definitely set to continue. So I think today what we wanted to share was some kind of general information that we're learning from our customers. So Sonia's going to talk to us a little bit today about what you're actually seeing within the marketplace and your clients.
Yeah. So it's been very slow. It's safe to say it's been the slowest Q1 I think I've ever experienced. It's taken a very long time for roles to get approved. Several approval chains that we need to go through, and hiring managers have got an appetite to recruit like for like, so they want to just backfill that role as quickly as possible. They just need that resource in their teams.
Different agenda, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. But businesses, I feel, are really sort of like wanting to save money, and they're really wanting to have to think strategically about their next move.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is causing a lot of the delays, whether it's at the beginning of the front end of the process, at the very beginning, or whether it's once we go to offer. I've seen occasions recently where roles have been pulled right at the offer stage as well. So it's definitely an interesting market. And I think, it is really important time at the moment to really challenge who you're bringing into the business and the reasons behind it. Because as you just mentioned, what you need in the business right now isn't necessarily what you're going to need in even sort of like 3 to 6 months down the line, never mind 2 to 3 years down the line.
I agree. And I think there's a big piece around this on board from a board approval perspective and a level. They need to think about workforce agility as well.
Yeah.
And actually if as a CEO, as a board member, if you're not thinking about that, actually you're going to very quickly get to a point where you're out of time, and actually making and taking action now is really important. And I predict actually at the moment 20% contingent worker versus 80% permanent worker, I think that's going to shift more towards 40% and 60% in the future.
I can see that happening. I can see it shift towards it already, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of the uncertainty in the market, I think a lot of people are swaying towards contingent resource.
And we already know like fractional support is in high demand.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Fractional, everything out there at the moment.
Everything is fractional at the moment. And actually you can see why. It's a cheaper way to bring in high level skill set. You need higher level skill set to deal with the change in demand at the moment. And actually that's what people are using. So what would you be recommending to your clients generally at the moment?
At the moment, I think I'd recommend for them to do what they're doing, just take a breath. Before kind of like, trying to hire like for like, just understand it exactly, what the business is trying to achieve longer term.
Yep.
Is it a short-term resource that they need? Or is it sort of like, your like for like backfill? And don't get too sort of like scared about the risks associated with the new legislative changes, although there is the risk element to it. But, there is a way to bring in contingent resource without sort of like, fearing the joint and several liabilities, which has come in this year, and IR35, that sort of thing. I think it's really important to remember that if you get the governance processes right, then it could absolutely be the right way to go to bring in that contingent resource.
I agree. And if you're thinking about anything that you embed into a business, it all starts with getting the right process and structure and governance procedure.
Yeah.
It is no different. There's a big scary word, isn't there, around contract resource, and
There
actually
is.
that's not true.
When the JSL came into play in April, there was a lot of my clients that came to me and asked to do an audit on their contingent workforce, just to sort of like, ensure that they were doing all the right things and they were compliant, which we're more than happy to do. And, and they were quite pleased that actually they had been doing all the right things, and it's just that peace of mind then when they're now looking to grow their teams.
So I think in summary, I think what we're here today to talk about really is very much thinking about how people introduce resources to the business moving forward, and actually this whole total workforce solution piece that we've been very much wedded for the last 25 years to talk about. I need a temporary resource, I need a permanent resource. Actually, what you should be challenging yourself is to say, what do I need for the business and what skill do I need? How they're brought in from that point, then there's ways and means around that all the way. So I think it's much more about thinking more productively in terms of what you need for the short term, because it is very short-sighted at the moment, and then think more longer term when you're actually in that position that you know what the foundation of the organisation is.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us today. If you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch.
You know where we are. Thank you.